We all need income in retirement, but how is that income going to be taxed? Well, that's an important question to have answered, and so, John, that's why we're tackling this subject today.
Yeah, taxation and how assets get taxed can affect everything from your Social Security to your assets to your income. And taxes are pretty complicated today, so depending on the asset that you have, it can be taxed a little bit differently. So what we want to do today is try to bring some clarity to a pretty confusing topic.
For most people in retirement, this is where the bulk of their income is going to come from, other than Social Security. This is the money that they've saved up. It could be $200,000, $500,000, it could be $1 million, several $1 million. And so this is substantial. And so this is where the bulk of your income is going to come from. And you are taxed at your ordinary tax rate. So if your tax rate is 20%, 25, 30 some percent, that's what you're going to pay in taxes every time you pull that out, John. So if you pull out $100,000 in a year and you're in a 30% tax bracket, $30,000, that's not a small amount of money, is going to go to taxes, and then you get to spend the $70,000.
Yes. Well, one of the things we always say is, let's say someone walks in, they have $1 million in a 401k or an IRA. We're not saying that you shouldn't have a 401k or an IRA. We know that you worked really hard for that money.
Sure.
But if you got $1 million in an IRA or 401k, the good news is you got $1 million. Bad news is it's not all yours.
Right.
Because whatever your tax bracket is, that's what you're going to pay out, because it's a bill or it's a debt that you owe the federal government. And so all IRAs or 401ks are tax deferred. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about as we get closer to the end of this segment is our tax analysis, where we can look at things like 401ks and IRAs and see if we can actually save money in taxes for you and your family over time, keeping more money in your pocket, working for you and your family. But all 401ks and IRAs are tax deferred. As you pull money out, you pay taxes at the ordinary income tax rate. So let's move on, Pete, to the next one that there's a little bit of confusion on. You would think the one that we really like, and that is versus a traditional IRA, which is what we just went over, a Roth IRA and how that is taxed.
Yeah, it could be a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k. And we know that if you establish a Roth IRA, it has to be there 5 years in order for you to be able to pull the money out and not be taxed on it. So there's that caveat. And then the other thing is you need to be over 59 and a half years old when you pull that money out for it not to be taxed. But if you play the game right, and it really is for income in the future when you're retired, assuming retirement age is over 59 and a half, then that money comes to you tax-free. So in that other example we gave, you pull $100,000 out of this, you keep $100,000.
It's a good deal.
That sounds like a lot better deal on the Roth IRA and Roth 401k. If you're not contributing, you're still working, not contributing to a Roth 401k, you should at least ask the people that you work for if that's available.
Yeah. And if a conversion privilege is available. If you've got money in deferred, you can actually convert. Now, you pay taxes on that.
Yeah, but it might be worth it.
Might be worth it. We've actually done some of those. So Roth IRA, traditional IRA, 401k, Roth 401k. The next one, Pete, that really impacts really everybody that we deal with and will impact everyone eventually is this whole idea of Social Security and how is that taxed. So many people think, well, I paid into Social Security all those years, and so when I pull money out, it's non-taxed.
Yeah.
But Social Security, up to 85% of it can actually be taxed in many cases. So you don't end up with as much as you think. So let's talk a little bit, Pete, about how Social Security is taxed and some of the strategies you might want to look at.
Well, until 1983, it wasn't taxed, but since that time, it is taxed for most people. Now, if you only make a little bit of money in retirement, which I don't think any of us are aiming to make a little bit of money, then none of our Social Security might be taxed. But John, we rarely run into someone that pays no taxes on any of their Social Security. And then for a lot of retirees, they're paying taxes on 50%. So if they're getting $30,000 in, they're paying taxes on $15,000 of it. But most of the people that we work with, John, and see from week to week, day to day, year to year, they are being taxed on 85% of that money. So if it's, again, $30,000 that you're pulling out, then probably $25,000 to $26,000 to $27,000 of it is being taxed. And John, it's taxed at ordinary income again, which if you're in a 20 or 30% tax bracket, that's what you pay taxes. That's your tax rate.
And so Social Security is an asset. It's not an entitlement program, and all this stuff sort of fits together. So we just got done talking about Roth 401k, Roth IRA. If you're pulling money, or at least you have some of your money in something that's tax-free, it can actually reduce the taxes that you're going to pay in your Social Security income. So there's a lot of crossover here between these asset classes, and you need to understand how they impact you and your family, because it is going to be different for everyone out there. But Social Security is going to account for most people, Pete, 20 to 30% of the retirement income. And so if you can raise that percentage 4 or 5%, maybe even 10%, because you have tax efficiencies, could be really helpful to your retirement. So
absolutely.
Understanding that is important. Another one that we get questions on and gets confusing is taxes on dividends. A lot of retirees use dividends as part of their income plan. So let's talk through a little bit in terms of how taxes are paid on dividends.
Yeah, again, then there's two kinds of dividends, if you will, a qualified dividend and a non-qualified dividend. And a qualified dividend means that you've kept it over 12 months, then you pay at the capital gains tax, which for most people is going to be less than their ordinary income. Not always, but let's say that that's 15 or 20% that they're paying in capital gains taxes. But if it's a non-qualified dividend that you've kept short-term, less than 12 months, then you actually, again, pay your ordinary income rate, which for many of the people that we're helping from day to day, week to week, that amount, that percentage is going to be higher.
Yeah, especially if you're a high income earner, you can pay as much as 37% on this.
Wow.
And so if you're actually an investor that has made money, and you sell that short-term capital gains, and you're a high income earner, you're going to lose up to 37% potentially. So you got to really understand that.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole strategy that we won't get into today called tax loss harvesting, and that's where you can sell something you've had a gain, something you've had a loss,
right,
but get something you've had a gain and potentially reduce that. So again, your tax strategy is pretty multifaceted, but it's really, really important to understand. Now this next one, Pete, is kind of interesting because interest rates have come up in this interest rate hiking cycle that the Fed has had. And read articles where there's something like $6 trillion sitting on the sidelines of the market right now. So if you're in essentially interest-bearing accounts, let's say you're in CDs or money markets or savings accounts, how is that taxed?
Yeah, so for one thing, they're taxed every year. So as you earn the interest, there's no tax deferral here. You pay on what you get. And John, it's kind of like our clients have a love-hate relationship with this because they wanted to get some interest on their accounts after many years never making anything. Oh, I got this money there and I made, $37 of interest for the year, and they complained about it. But now all of a sudden, they've got $100,000 sitting there in a money market and they make over $5,000 of income. And they're squawking at us saying, why did I get this 1099 for $5,000 I got to pay taxes on? Well, if you make money, you do have to pay taxes. So if you're in a 20% tax bracket, you get that $5,000, you did net $4,000. So that is a better deal than making nothing. But it's amazing the amount of people who want it both ways. They want to make the high interest, but they don't want to have to pay taxes on it. But you do, every year.
Yep. And if the after-tax amount you're better off than you were, say, 2 or 3
Right.
years ago when interest rates were essentially
Sure.
nothing. They're
Right.
very low. You're probably still coming out
Oh, yes.
better and at least keeping up with inflation, which is really, really important. So this last one that we want to talk about, Pete, is around one of the most controversial financial products, if you will, out there. And there is probably more misunderstanding and more confusion about annuities than almost anything else out there. But if you own an annuity, and a lot of people do, how are annuities taxed and what are the pitfalls or positives that people need to look for?
Yeah, so an annuity can be inside an IRA or a qualified account, or just outside the IRA and it's just a regular account. And the annuity that's inside the IRA, then you pay taxes just like you do on any other IRA. It doesn't really matter that it's an annuity versus a stock or a mutual fund or anything else that's inside that IRA. The IRA takes precedent, so that's easy one. But then there is a non-IRA annuity. They call it a non-qualified annuity. So if you put, say, $100,000 into that, you've already paid taxes on the $100,000 when it's deposited into that non-qualified annuity. And then as it makes money, as long as you leave it alone, the gain grows tax deferred, kind of like an IRA. And so then when you start pulling money out, it's last in, which is your gains, first out. So put $100,000 in, it grows to $125,000. You start pulling money out, then the $25,000 is going to be taxed at your ordinary income, just like other things like a CD or a money market. But then once you get down to your $100,000, then you already paid taxes on it, so that's tax-free now.
Yeah. And so which of these might be right for you? It just depends. Some people need annuities, some people don't. All of this is, of course, a very individual decision that should be custom fitted for you and your family. But I will tell you this, all of this conversation we're having today about how assets are taxed and many other tax questions, because again, the tax code is really complex. You as an investor need to be fully informed about how what you're holding today or anything you might move your assets to or into, how that's going to be taxed. And one of the ways that we do that at Beacon is we offer a free tax analysis. And what this tax analysis is going to do is really unpack your current situation and how much you could potentially pay in taxes, and then uses what's on the tax records today, or the books, if you will, in terms of what's available to you and your family to actually reduce the tax burden that you have. You can never eliminate it, but you can really reduce the tax burden through effective planning. And so if that's something you'd like additional information about, our office would love to put that into your hands. Give us a call. We'll get you that information. Thanks for listening, and make sure you hit the subscribe button below.